All right. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to have Christy Keating here tonight. We did an interview with her on Thursday, which was fantastic. It didn't record, so we wanted to go live again just to make sure that all of you get the great information that we talked about. We had a really fantastic conversation, and we wanted to make sure that we get that information to you. So, hi, Christy. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Hi, Sheri. Thanks so much for having me. I'm
Sure,
really,
it's a pleasure, and
oh,
thanks for
sorry.
coming back again.
Of course, of course. This is
So,
important stuff. So
yes, oh my gosh, it is. So let me tell you a little bit about Christy and who she is and why it's such an amazing privilege that we're able to speak to her today. So she's a licensed attorney and a parenting coach, a certified parenting coach. So that combination in and of itself is pretty amazing and very unique. So that's quite impressive. She has 20 years working as a prosecuting attorney at the King County Prosecutor's Office, where she specialized in the prosecution of sexually violent predators. So that's pretty intense work there, Christy.
yeah.
She now owns the Heartful Parent and Savvy Parent Safe Kids, and provides parent coaching services and community education for all of us parents who need lots of education, especially around this particular topic. One thing that she does with Savvy Parent Safe Kids is that she helps parents talk to their children about body safety, online safety, abuse prevention, and consent, which is what brings you here tonight, Christy.
Yes,
Consent.
it is. It is
Right.
a topic that's really, been in the news a lot lately. So
A lot. And it can be really confusing for parents of both girls and boys about what consent is. And so let's just start there. What do we mean by consent? We hear the word thrown around a lot.
we do, and it is confusing. And you know, most of the states on this are pretty uniform, but it does vary a little bit from state to state. So, from a legal perspective, our law says that consent means that at the time of a sexual act, intercourse, usually when we are ending up in court, that there are actual words or conduct indicating freely given agreement to have that sexual contact or intercourse. I
Okay.
like to think of consent a lot more broadly than that. I don't think the legal definition is all that helpful to parents or to teenagers, from on a day-to-day basis. So I like to think consent I think of it as just the touching of another person's body, and that we should only touch another person's body in any way, shape, or form after that person has given us their express consent. And that goes everywhere from, giving someone a high five. If someone if we put our hand up for a high five, we don't force the other person to respond to that. They often do, but we're not forcing that consent, or that interaction. We are only doing it with their consent or waiting for them to consent to that. And it goes all the way up to, all sorts of sexual contact and sexual intercourse. And it's just that idea that we really should be both ourselves and teaching our children that we don't touch another person's body unless they say it's okay.
Right. That's so true. And I think that, like you said, we have to start at a very young age because it's not just about sexual intercourse, which is where we as adults kind of naturally go to. That's what we think it's all about. But if we start in high school with our kids talking about consent, it's kind of a jolt. It's like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that before. So we really do need to start this stuff early, so it's not just coming out of the blue.
We do. I mean, I think that's true with a lot of parenting conversations that the earlier we start talking about it, the better off we are and the easier it's going to be. But yeah, these conversations can start from the time that, a baby is little, tiny, by just explaining to them, I mean, obviously there's some things with an infant that you still need to do, like change their diaper, but you can say things like, I'm going to touch your body, I'm going to change your diaper, and just walking them through what's going to happen and being as respectful of their body space as we can. Certainly with toddlers and, young kids, we can really talk about that we are careful not to, tickle someone, touch someone, hug someone, do any of those things unless they say it's okay. And we can demonstrate that by similarly not forcing them to engage in any sort of physical activity that they don't want to. And the story that I always think of when I talk about this is, I'm really aware of consent issues. Because of my former work as a prosecutor, my parents are really aware of it. But when my oldest daughter was young, she went through this period of time where she didn't want to hug my grandmother, who was in her 90s. She was older. Sometimes elderly people can be scary for young children. And my older daughter just had this funny face, didn't want to give her a hug, didn't want to, sit on her lap and touch her. And my mom was really frustrated by that because it hurt my grandmother's feelings. And I felt bad. And, I don't want my 93-year-old grandmother to have her feelings hurt. But I stuck to my guns and I said, nope, you know what? To my older daughter, you do not need to give anyone a hug that you don't want to. You don't have to sit on someone's lap if you don't want to. You get to decide what happens with your body. And by doing that at that age, it's made it easier as she's grown to say, no, you get control over that. It's your body.
Mm-hmm. For sure. One of the things that kind of stands out to me in that story is if you would have made her hug your grandmother, what you're saying is her feelings are more important than yours. Yeah. And you need to be uncomfortable to please that person. So when we think of it in that perspective, that's a really big lesson that we're teaching them, that your comfort goes above this other person's when it comes to your body.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, particularly as kids get older, and we see this oftentimes with young women and girls, that they sort of receive this societal message that it's their job to make other people happy and to please them. And we want to be sending the message that not at the expense of your own safety, your own, mental health, any of that. And just your own autonomy over your own body. So we can send that message from a really young age and continue it right on up until they leave for college and when they're at college too.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's a really big issue because like you pointed out, not just when it comes to body, but in life in general, we often are teaching girls that they need to please others. And it definitely infiltrates into this arena as well.
It does. It does for sure. And it's so important that they are getting that message from us about body autonomy, that this is their body and what consent means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. So why is this so important to teach it to our kids?
Well, I mean, we just touched on a little bit of that, but I think from a bigger perspective, when we start taking consent out of physical touch and saying that consent is not a critical component of that, we are creating a culture that allows sexual assault to thrive. I know as a mom and as a former prosecutor, and as a parent educator, that is not the kind of culture that I want to live in or have my daughter live in. And I think unfortunately that is where we still are. We've certainly made headway, but in many respects we still have this culture where consent is overlooked, is not considered as important as it should be. And sexual assault is, at all-time highs. It's thriving. And that is scary for us as parents, I think. The other reason is that we want to be teaching this is that we want to make sure that all of our children, our boys, our girls, children that are gay, transgender, bisexual, I mean, the whole gamut of identity and gender, we want to make sure that everyone is afforded the same dignity, respect, freedom, and autonomy as everyone else. And the only way that we can do that is by teaching consent. And, intrinsic with the idea of consent is respect for other people. So I think that's really important. Back in 2011, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, did a study that reported that 20% of all women